2000 in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which ranks 46th in the list of victims. Nevertheless, Israel has been more often condemned by the UN and other international organizations than all other nations taken together. That treatment is typical and part of a larger pattern of discriminatory abuse to which Israel has been subjected over the years. Shunned by many, restricted from joining the regional bloc to which it naturally belongs, bypassed for a seat on the Security Council, perennially threatened with non-recognition of its credentials and expulsion from the General Assembly, Israel has long been marginalized and otherwise maltreated by the very body that helped to bring it into being and granted it international recognition and legitimacy. By defying its own highest principles and allowing itself to become the premier venue for public displays of anti-Zionist bias, the UN has contributed substantially to the intellectual and ideological assault now raging against the Jewish state. Today's anti-Zionism takes many forms, from racism, colonialism, and criminality to debates over whether a Jewish state should have been created in the first place and is entitled to survive. Some argue that Israel is responsible for inciting terrorism against Western countries. Others insist that Israel and its supporters pushed America and Great Britain into an unnecessary war against Iraq and is now seeking to provoke a similar war against Iran. A growing corpus of literature aggressively advances these ideas, the net result of which is an accumulating brief against the moral standing and even the legitimacy of the Jewish state. If you want evidence, read Noam Chomsky, Tony Judt, Norman Finkelstein, Jacqueline Rose, John Rose, Mark Ellis, Joel Covell, John Pilger, Jimmy Carter, Stephen Walt, and John Mearsheimer. And this is just a short list of today's anti-Israel polemicists. To what extent their arguments and accusations will prove to be convincing and may help to shape government policy is impossible right now to say. What we do know is this: an anti-Zionist in politics, the media, NGOs, and certain trade unions and religious institutions. It's also being legitimized at universities around the world. Students at Oxford University, for instance, have gathered several times this past year to debate such subjects as these. Zionism today is the real enemy of the Jews. The pro-Israel lobby has successfully stifled Western debate about Israel's actions, and one state is the only solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Those are all titles of debates at Oxford this year. At least one American textbook entitled Israel Opposing Viewpoints encourages students in this country to take up the astonishing question, should Israel exist? No other country on earth has its right to exist put under question, but interrogating Israel's most fundamental human right, its basic entitlement to be, appears now to be normal pedagogical practice in some quarters. What then can we conclude from these observations? At least this much. Ideas have consequences, and when they are bad ideas, the consequences can be hugely destructive. In its contemporary forms, Anti-Zionism is not only a bad idea, but a dangerous idea, and especially when it emanates from such an influential body as the UN, it needs to be forcefully contested and ultimately defeated. How do we do that? By continually exposing bad ideas as bad ideas and pointing up the immense harm they can cause if they go unchecked. The challenge is clear and needs to be met with resolve. Listen one last time to Dennis McShane. The resurgence of anti-Jewish hostility Mr. McShane recognizes, and these are his words, indicates that we are at the beginning of a long intellectual and ideological struggle, which is not only about Jews or Israel. It is about everything that Democrats have long fought for, the truth without fear, no matter what one's religion or political beliefs. The new anti-Semitism, he says, threatens all of humanity. Blessings on Mr. McShane telling us so with clarity and conviction. If enough people follow his lead, it should be possible to diminish, if not altogether eliminate, the threats he describes. Failure to actively and effectively combat them, however, is only likely to bring on darker and even more difficult times ahead, and not only for the Jews.